Valkorion stands as a fascinating figure, commanding immense power and influence that reverberates across millennia. Story, woven through the complex histories of the Sith Empire, the Eternal Empire, and even the Galactic Republic, is one of profound ambition, mastery over the Force, and an indomitable will to shape destiny. Valkorion's presence is defined by a strength that surpasses conventional Sith, or even Jedi philosophies. He is a true sovereign who stands beyond such labels, driven by an unrelenting pursuit of immortality and control over the galaxy. To understand Valkorion is to grapple with the vast, intricate network of plans, identities, and legacies he has left in his wake. Originally born as Tenebrae on the planet Midrias, Valkorion was raised amidst the brutal customs of the ancient Sith. Midrias, isolated yet burdened by Sith rule, bore witness to Tenebrae's early ascension to power, marked by a cold and calculated ruthlessness even as a child. He wielded the Force with frightening efficiency, demonstrating an innate power that eclipsed others on his homeworld. By the age of 10, he had not only mastered several Sith techniques but had also used his skills to manipulate, dominate, and ultimately eliminate anyone who posed a threat to his power. His rise was meteoric, his control over Midrias complete before he even reached adulthood. When his reputation reached the Dark Lord of the Sith, Markaragnos Tenebrae was summoned, recognized, and given the title of Sith Lord. But Tenebrae's ambitions far exceeded the confines of Sith hierarchy. Taking the name Vitiate, he went on to forge his own dark path, focused on one unyielding goal: eternal life. To achieve this, he tapped into powers considered forbidden and dangerous even by the Sith. His first major act of conquest on his way to immortality was the ritualistic destruction of his own planet. Vitiate drained the life force from every living being on Midrias, now called Nathema, leaving it a barren wasteland void of life or connection to the Force. This dark ritual not only amplified his power but also granted him a form of immortality, one he would sustain through a terrifying level of mastery over the dark side. As Vitiate, his influence grew into an empire beyond the borders of what most could fathom. For centuries, he reigned in secrecy, orchestrating plans within plans, manipulating Sith and Jedi alike from the shadows. He pursued knowledge and power with relentless precision, calculating every move, every alliance, and every betrayal. His reign was not a mere exercise in power, but a deliberate, methodical expansion of his control. Vitiate was not satisfied with mere dominance over others. He sought to extend his influence over life itself, defying death and reshaping the Force according to his will. Vitiate's transformation into Valkorion marked another evolution of his identity and ambition. Discarding the title of Sith Emperor, he became the ruler of the Eternal Empire on the distant world of Zakuul. The Eternal Empire, with its fleets of advanced technology and legions of loyal sky troopers, was not bound by Sith tradition or galactic conflict. Under Valkorion, Zakuul rose as a dominant power, feared for its strength and unique philosophy that transcended the duality of Sith and Jedi teachings. Zakuul's people saw Valkorion as a god-king, an immortal ruler who promised them stability and prosperity, and they revered him as a deity. Unlike the Sith, who gloried in conflict, Valkorion preached a doctrine of order, submission, and ultimate loyalty to his will. Zakuul's empire was forged on the principle of domination without overt conquest. Valkorion expanded his influence through diplomacy, manipulation, and only the necessary application of force. His rule was absolute yet strangely restrained, using the power of the Eternal Throne to maintain control over his people and hold dominion over the galaxy's powers without resorting to outright war. He saw himself as above the petty conflicts between Sith and Jedi, wielding a power so vast and so ancient that he considered himself beyond the reach of traditional Force wielders. The Eternal Empires might lay not only in Valkorion's command of the Force but also in the powerful Eternal Fleet, a seemingly indestructible armada capable of crushing any opposition. With the fleet at his disposal, Valkorion could extend his influence across the galaxy, presenting a clear and present danger to both the Republic and the Sith Empire. His children, Arcan, Thexan, and Valen, were instrumental in enforcing his rule, though their loyalties and rivalries would eventually threaten the stability of his empire. Valkorion saw them not as heirs but as tools, pawns in a greater design. He was willing to sacrifice even his own blood to ensure his vision remained unchallenged. In his pursuit of eternal life, Valkorion mastered an art of manipulation that went beyond mere control. He could inhabit other bodies, transfer his essence, and even exist as a disembodied consciousness, able to influence events long after he had seemingly vanished from the physical world. This mastery over life and death placed him in a league of his own, setting him apart from other Sith Lords and Jedi Masters. To Valkorion, life was a resource, a currency he could expend, drain, and control at will. He had learned to cheat death in ways no one else had, becoming a shadowy presence capable of bending the galaxy to his will, even in the absence of a corporeal form. Despite his unparalleled power, Valkorion's downfall lay within his own empire and family. The Eternal Empire, while powerful, was built upon Valkorion's singular vision, and without his constant presence, it was vulnerable to rebellion and fracture. His children, each inheriting aspects of his ambition and ruthlessness, became pawns and ultimately threats. Arcann, in particular, sought to prove himself by overthrowing his father's control, consumed by a need for power and recognition that Valkorion had never granted. Vaylin, Valkorion's daughter, possessed tremendous power but was deeply scarred by her father's manipulation and control over her, fueling a resentment that would eventually contribute to the unraveling of his empire. In the end, Valkorion's vision, while grand and far-reaching, was susceptible to the flaws of hubris and overconfidence. His children, while carefully selected and molded, were ultimately agents of his undoing, each seeking autonomy and identity beyond the roles he had designed for them. The Eternal Empire, for all its might, was bound to the fate of its creator, and without his unyielding guidance it began to falter. Valkorion's plans, while vast, underestimated the resilience of those who opposed him and the inherent unpredictability of human nature, even within his own bloodline. Valkorion's legacy is one that defies simple categorization. He was a conqueror, a tyrant, a manipulator, and in the eyes of Zakuul, a god. His reign reshaped the galaxy, forcing the Sith and the Republic to confront a threat that could not be defeated through traditional means. His power was such that even death could not fully contain him, as his spirit lingered, haunting those who sought to defy his will. In the end, Valkorion was not merely a Sith or a Jedi, nor was he a simple ruler or emperor. He was a being who embodied the very limits of the Force's potential for power and control. His existence was a challenge to the natural order, a force of will that sought to bend the galaxy to his vision, regardless of the cost, to those who dared to stand in his way. The story of Valkorion is one of relentless ambition and the pursuit of a power so absolute that it risked annihilating the galaxy itself. His rise, his rule, and his eventual fall serve as a testament to the perils of unchecked ambition and the dangers of a power that seeks to transcend life, death, and morality itself. For Valkorion, there were no boundaries, no limits, only the eternal drive to dominate and control. Valkorion's influence extended far beyond his immediate reach, setting a standard for what it meant to be a master of the Force without the constraints of traditional Sith or Jedi teachings. His power was not merely a consequence of strength in the dark side, but rather a unique blend of abilities that he manipulated at will, with no moral or ethical restraint. He saw the Force as a tool, one that he could bend, break, and reshape to fit his vision. In contrast to the typical Sith approach, which thrived on overt displays of power and dominance, Valkorion preferred subtlety and control. He wasn't simply interested in ruling, he wanted to construct a legacy that would survive any physical death, transcending the limitations of the corporeal world. The Eternal Empire itself was a remarkable feat of engineering, culture, and philosophy. Zakuul, the heart of Valkorion's empire, stood as a symbol of his vision, a society free from the endless conflicts of the galaxy's force-wielding factions. The citizens of Zakuul, largely unaware of the intricacies of the Force, embraced Valkorion as a godlike figure. Their loyalty was not forged through fear alone, but through a genuine belief in his promises of stability and prosperity. Valkorion presented himself as a wise and benevolent leader, an almost mythic figure who guided his people with a steady hand. For the first time, an empire existed that was not bound by Sith codes of aggression or Republic ideals of democracy, but was rather a construct of pure, unadulterated control and order. Valkorion's rule over Zakuul allowed him to sidestep the usual pitfalls of ruling a Sith empire or aligning with the Republic. Instead, he crafted a society that celebrated discipline, unity, and allegiance to the eternal throne, with himself as the central, undying figure of worship. Through the Eternal Fleet, a seemingly indestructible armada, Valkorion extended Zakuul's reach across the galaxy. This fleet, powered by technology from the ancient builders of Iokath, was unlike anything the galaxy had seen, a self-sustaining war machine that could obliterate entire fleets and devastate planets with impunity. It was a clear demonstration of Valkorion's ambition to impose his will on a galactic scale, a force so overwhelming that it left even the Scythian Republic scrambling to find ways to counter its might. Valkorion's children Arcan, Thexan, and Vaylin were also integral to his plan. However, he raised them not as heirs to the Eternal Empire, but as tools to further his own designs. Karkan and Thexan, born and bred as warriors, displayed remarkable loyalty and strength, becoming champions of their father's empire. Yet Valkorion's relationship with them was as detached and calculating as any of his other decisions. He saw them not as family but as extensions of his power, pieces in a larger puzzle that he manipulated with surgical precision. Vaylin, his daughter, possessed raw and terrifying power that even Valkorion feared. To control her, he imposed mental constraints, suppressing her abilities and restricting her independence. This manipulation fueled a deep-seated resentment in Vaylin, who would eventually seek to break free from her father's control in a violent and destructive way. Arcan, the most loyal of Valkorion's children, eventually grew embittered by his father's emotional distance and perceived lack of recognition. Though he carried out Valkorion's will without question, Arcan's loyalty transformed into a desire to prove himself as something more than a mere instrument of power. This desire grew into resentment and ultimately a burning need to surpass Valkorion. Arcan's ambitions, spurred by years of obedience and hidden discontent, would become the seed of rebellion within the Eternal Empire, a turning point that Valkorion may or may not have anticipated. His inability to connect with his children on a human level was not a mere flaw. It was emblematic of his broader detachment from mortal concerns. Valkorion's mind operated on a level where relationships were mere strategies, where individuals were assets or obstacles, and where even his own offspring were expendable. The ultimate flaw in Valkorion's empire lay in its dependence on his presence. The Eternal Empire, while immensely powerful, was an extension of Valkorion himself, and without his constant guidance it lacked the cohesion necessary to withstand the ambitions of those he controlled. His children, each bearing the psychological scars of his rule, became volatile elements within his empire. Arcan's rebellion and Vaylin's insatiable desire for freedom and power began to erode the stability Valkorion had so carefully constructed. The Eternal Empire, despite its technological might and ideological control, was a fragile creation, one that could not survive the cracks formed by human and familial resentment. Valkorion's approach to immortality was as unique as his empire. Rather than relying on traditional Sith methods of maintaining his physical form, he mastered the art of essence transfer and mental projection, allowing him to inhabit new bodies and extend his influence beyond his original form. This technique gave him a spectral quality, a presence that could haunt, manipulate, and control long after his physical death. Valkorion's spirit was not bound by the limitations of the physical world. He had achieved a state of existence that defied even the most advanced understandings of the Force. He could embed himself within the minds of others, twist their perceptions, and bend their wills to his own without ever appearing to lift a finger. This ability allowed him to interact with key figures in the galaxy, shaping events from a distance and influencing individuals in ways that they themselves could barely comprehend. This form of immortality, however, came with its own risks. Valkorion's spirit, while powerful, was not invincible. His existence became bound to the mental and emotional strength of those he inhabited, placing him in a state of vulnerability that his physical form had never experienced. To maintain his presence, he relied on the strength of his host and the stability of his empire. Without a physical form or a stable environment, his influence began to wane and his control became tenuous. Valkorion's need to inhabit and dominate others ultimately set the stage for his final downfall, as he could no longer rely on the solidity of his own body to exert his power. In his encounters with those who sought to challenge him, Valkorion displayed an almost casual confidence. He viewed his opponents not as genuine threats, but as distractions or opportunities to further test his own limits. Whether dealing with powerful Sith, resilient Jedi, or even his own rebellious children, Valkorion never wavered, always holding himself above the conflicts that consumed the galaxy. His calm, detached demeanor only deepened the fear and awe he inspired. He was a being who seemed to stand outside the constraints of mortality, and this apparent invincibility served as both his greatest strength and his eventual undoing. Ultimately, Valkorion's legacy is as much a warning as it is a testament to the potential of the Force. His vision was vast, his power unmatched, and his achievements undeniable. Yet in his quest to control all aspects of existence, he overlooked the essential elements of humanity: compassion, connection, and understanding. Valkorion's empire, like his own life, was built on domination rather than harmony, and it was this lack of connection that left him vulnerable to betrayal and downfall. In seeking to transcend life and death, he severed the ties that bound him to the living world, leaving himself isolated and ultimately alone. Valkorion's story serves as a dark mirror for both the Sith and the Jedi, a reminder of what lies at the extreme ends of power and ambition. He achieved feats that were thought impossible, pushed the boundaries of the Force beyond recognition, and defied the limits of mortal existence. Yet for all his success, his empire crumbled, his children turned against him, and his legacy became a cautionary tale. Valkorion showed the galaxy what it meant to wield absolute power, but he also demonstrated the price of forsaking all other bonds in the pursuit of that power. In the end, Valkorion's influence continues to linger as a specter in the galaxy, a shadow cast over the history of both the Sith and the Republic. His life, his rule, and his eventual downfall encapsulate the perils of absolute ambition, the dangers of a will unrestrained by empathy or moral restraint. For those who study Valkorion's legacy, the lesson is clear: power, no matter how great, is ultimately hollow if it is wielded in isolation. His story is a testament to the complexity of the Force, to the potential it holds for both creation and destruction, and to the delicate balance that every Force user must navigate. Valkorion's life was a journey into the darkest depths of that potential, an exploration of what lies beyond the boundaries of life, death, and the Force itself.